We have a special addition to our big church gathering this morning. And so I would like Sammy Case, if you would come and bring your mom and dad up here. Come on up here, Sammy. Sammy, how old are you today?
5.
You are 5. Do you know that when you turn 5 in this church, that we invite you to come and join us? We call this Big Church, because that's where all the big people go, you know. And so we welcome you today into Big Church. And as way of welcoming you, we have something for you, and it is the latest in fashion. I bet you could probably tell me who those people are, but I wonder what's in here now. Look what's in here. Got some crayons. You know when you use those, remember we talked, when do you color that picture? When I get up and talk later, right? And I keep going, and that's when you draw. All right, now, you got some candy in here? Make sure Dad doesn't eat it. I'm not going to say about Mom, you know, if she wants it, you can let her have it. But you only eat that when Mom and Dad let you have it, okay? That's just a little special gift. And then we have for you the Illustrated Study Bible for kids.
Yeah.
And
it's my own Bible.
It's your own Bible. And when I get up and I read a scripture, you can say, Mom, help me find it. And she can look in and she can find the passage that I'm going to be reading today. Okay? So you can do that and you'll be able to follow right along with me. And then there is one more thing. You've already got, thank you. You've already got this today, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you already picked it, but remember to pick that up every time. And then we have When I Go to Church. And this, I think, is more for Mom and Dad than for you, so you can give that to them. So now, Sammy, this is a bag, and we call this your going to church bag. And so what we want to do is every Sunday morning, when you're getting ready to come to church, you make sure and grab this bag. And you can put your Bible back in there, and you can put another book, some things to do, and make sure that your crayons are in there. And then when you pick up your little special bulletin, every Sunday, you have this. And you bring this with you every Sunday. Now, to the church, I want to say this. You know, we all know Rudy is a fireman. And we know that with a fireman's schedule, there are going to be some times where Rudy is not able to be here on Sunday morning. And if you have ever watched Ann come in when Rudy is not there, you are amazed at how she is able to come in with 3, and Sammy is the oldest, with 3 little girls, and she gets them out of the car and into the church. I am amazed every time I see it happen. But, you know, there will be times that Ann is going to be coming where she's going to need help. And there will be sometimes, occasionally, because Ann helps in our extended teaching care. She helps with the preschoolers during the worship service. There are going to be some times that, probably not very often, but one of those times every month that Ann works in ETC could possibly be the Sunday that Rudy has to work at the station. And so there we will need some grandmas in addition to Sammy's grandma who's already here. Sammy's grandma might need some other grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of those to step in and say, hey, let me help out today. And so I want to challenge you. You know, if you come in and you see and just tell Ann, put me on the list. If you are doing ETC and Rudy's not here and you need some help with Sammy for her to sit with somebody during the worship service, let her know that you'd be willing to do that because it takes all of us to help our little ones to grow up and to grow in their relationship with Christ. And so, Sammy, congratulations on your birthday and welcome to Big Church.
Thank you.
All right, you can have a seat. Thank you. If you got a Bible, I want to ask you to open to Judges chapter 12. And we're going to kind of open up this morning with thinking about jealousy. And there's going to be a picture come up here. And this is a picture of a man named Samuel Beckett. I didn't know what he looked like. I just Googled it, and this picture came up. But he was an author, very well known, was very well regarded. You know, most everybody thought that his works were just incredible, except for one person who lived in his house. You see, his wife was extremely jealous of his success. And one day they were seated in the house, and the phone rang. And Mr. Beckett's wife picked up the phone, And she answered, she said, hello. And then she says, oh, yes, I see. Okay, yes. Okay, well, thank you for calling. And hangs up. And because of the way that she had responded, Beckett is thinking, boy, this is terrible news. Who died? And he said, well, what happened? Did somebody hurt? And she says, oh, no, much worse than that. And he said, what? And she said, well, you just won a Pulitzer Prize. I can't believe they gave that to you. I mean, here's a woman, you talk about some jealousy now. That's some pretty serious jealousy. Most of us have experienced jealousy. I can tell you that, yes, I've experienced jealousy. I remember in high school, my junior year in high school, we had a new basketball coach. I'd played football, came into the basketball season, and this kid who I had known from almost the time I was born, we had grown up together. We played the same position, and I knew that one of us was going to make varsity and one of us was going to make JV. Now, he had a leg up on me because he didn't play football, so he had been in the basketball off season the whole time. And he made JV, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was better than him. And it just irked me that Kelly made varsity and I was stuck on JV. And I was mad. I didn't like that. I had to make a choice. And I came very close to just quitting basketball and going back to football and just playing football. I mean, I was that close to just saying, you know what? They don't want me on varsity, I'm going to just leave. Fortunately, the JV coach caught me. And he told me, Grant, man, I am so glad we got you on JV. Man, I am so glad to have you with us. And then he said, I know that you'd rather be on varsity. But he said, man, you can come down here. He said, you're going to help make everybody else better. Because he said, Grant, because you know the game. And you know what, Grant? You can help me. He said, you can help me be a coach as you're playing. And he said, so just come down here and help us, man, and get us better. And I thought about it, and I still wanted to quit. And I was still mad. I was still jealous. But this other guy had made varsity, and I was on JV. But I had to make a choice. What was I going to do? Was I just going to get bitter? Or would I get better? Well, fortunately, this coach helped me to choose to get better. Now, I was still jealous. I hate to admit it. I still didn't like the fact that he was on varsity. Still didn't like the fact that I was on JV. But I said, I'm just going to make the best of it. I'm going to make the best of it. And I'm not going to worry about the accolades that my friend gets because he's on varsity and I'm just on JV. And I ended up that year, I had the best time. Actually, before the season was over, they started moving me up to varsity. And after playing a couple of games on varsity, I almost said, you know what, coach, just put me down to JV. Because playing on JV was fun. Playing on varsity, it wasn't as much fun. I ended up getting what I wanted and realizing that what I had was maybe better, maybe more fun. Well, today we're going to read a story, and we're going to talk about jealousy. We're going to talk about what it costs us. If you got a Bible again, Judges chapter 12. We'll start reading in verse 1. The men of Ephraim were called together and crossed the Jordan to Zephon. They said to Jephthah, why have you crossed over to fight against the Ammonites, but didn't call us to go with you? We will burn your house down with you in it. Now remember, we talked the last couple of weeks, we've talked about this guy Jephthah, and that the Ammonites had come in and they had invaded an area that Jephthah lived in, and Jephthah had been recruited by the people of Gilead, the Jewish people there, to become their leader, and they have fought and they wipe out, they defeat the Ammonites completely, have a resounding victory. And so now the people of Ephraim, which is one of the 12 tribes of Israel, now they are coming back and they're mad because they didn't get to be part of the battle. Really what they're really complaining about isn't that they didn't get to be part of the battle. They're complaining that they didn't get to be part of the victory. And that's why I said this whole thing is about jealousy. Let's pick back up verse 2. Then Jephthah said to them, my people and I had a serious conflict with the Ammonites. So I called for you, but you didn't deliver me from their power. When I saw that you weren't going to deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over to the Ammonites, and the Lord handed them over to me. Why then have you come today to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead. They fought and defeated Ephraim, because Ephraim had said, you Gileadites are Ephraimite fugitives in the territories of Ephraim and Manasseh. The Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan, leading to Ephraim. Whenever a fugitive from Ephraim said, let me cross over, the Gileadites asked him, are you an Ephraimite? If he answered no, they told him, please say Shibboleth. If he said Sibboleth, because he could not pronounce it correctly, they seized him and killed him at the fords of the Jordan. At that time, 42,000 from Ephraim died. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years, and when he died, he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. Does jealousy cost us? You know, for me, it almost cost me the joy of what was truly my favorite sport, and still is my favorite sport. I mean, if you ask me what my favorite, it's basketball. And because of the jealousy that I had, I almost gave up playing basketball just because I didn't get put on varsity at the beginning of the season. I almost gave it up. Jealousy cost me, now that's small. What did jealousy cost the people of Israel, or of Ephraim? Sounds like 42,000 lives. We're going to talk today some more about the costs of jealousy in our life. Let's continue to worship. Stan, what does jealousy cause? What does it cost us? What does it bring about? Well, we read this story of this tribe Ephraim. Now, some of you, you know, if you really know your Old Testament, you know exactly who the tribe of Ephraim is. But for others of us, let me give you a little bit of a little primer on who Ephraim is. Ephraim and Manasseh were the two sons of Joseph. And if you remember, when they were in Egypt, Joseph's dad, Jacob, or otherwise known as Israel, said to his son Joseph that I want to bring your two sons and basically adopt your two sons as my own. And so they would receive, his two sons would receive a full inheritance from Israel himself. And so he brings these two boys and he brings a blessing on them. And so Ephraim and Manasseh, they were the grandsons of Jacob, but they had become his sons because Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. He was his son from his first son from his beloved wife. And so Ephraim and Manasseh were kind of special within the people of Israel. And I think that mentality that they were special, that they were extra loved, I think that just kind of filtered down through the tribe. And so Ephraim especially had this idea that they were just kind of maybe a little better than everybody else. And in the book of Judges, we've already seen Ephraim sit out a battle and only come and complain about being left out when the victory was over. Anybody remember what was the first battle that Ephraim sits out and then they come back and they complain? Anybody remember? It's in the book of Judges. It wasn't last week. Okay, that was the second one they set out. The story of Gideon. And the story of Gideon, when Gideon goes to fight after the war is over and they have won, then Ephraim comes and says, hey, whoa, why didn't you invite us? And Gideon, basically just like Jephthah, says, but we did. And you said you were too busy. You said, no, sorry, we're not going to do that. You didn't join us, and so we left you, and we went on. And so here you have this tribe that they think that they are too good to join anybody else. Now, when Ephraim has a problem, guess what they expect? When Ephraim has a problem with other peoples coming in and attacking them, well, Ephraim expects every other tribe of Israel to drop what they're doing and come help. But Ephraim kind of has this idea that, unless we are given the leadership, unless one of us becomes the commander of the army, unless one of us is in charge, we don't want any part of it. We only want to be a part of it if we are going to receive the glory. We only want to be a part of it if we are the ones that everybody is going to look at and say, boy, we could not have won that without Ephraim. You know, they say, yes, we'll come help as long as we get all the glory. If anybody else is going to receive attention, if anybody else is going to get all the attaboys, then we don't want any part of it. We only want to be in it if we're going to be the ones to get the credit. And here it's only after the victory is sealed that Ephraim finally musters up its forces. Now, if you read that story again, you may go, Jephthah says that I called for Ephraim and they didn't come. And you might look back and say, okay, well, let me find back in the verses before. Let me go back to chapter 10, chapter 11, and read in there in this whole story of this guy Jephthah. I'm sure I'll read in there where it tells us exactly when he went to them and asked for their help. It doesn't say it. But we all know when you read the Bible, there's so much that you just go, boy, there is so much that happened between the verses, so to speak. And so it doesn't specifically tell us where Jephthah went back and talked to the leaders of Ephraim and said, hey, listen, guys, we got this problem. We're going to go to war. Would you guys please bring some soldiers and help us out? You're not going to find it specifically written in there. But the way that Jephthah talks to the leaders of Ephraim, it is very clear that he did send out at some point to the people of Ephraim and say to them, hey, we got this problem. Would you guys come and help us? And so their whole deal of saying, you didn't send anybody, it's a bunch of garbage. Okay, he did. They just said no. They wanted to sit out God's work until they saw the victory. And then they wanted to jump in and derail it. If you know from my experience, many times those who exhibit jealousy, they usually, maybe even often, are the same ones who sat on the sidelines and watched others work for victory. Whether that be in the church, whether that be on a sports team, whether that be in work. You guys have worked in collaborative settings. You've probably experienced somebody that just wanted to sit on the sidelines and kind of snipe about everything, complain and just kind of try to derail everything. But then once it accomplishes what it was supposed to accomplish, they want to jump in and say, oh yeah, we were part of that. They want to sit back and they want to just watch it and maybe even if maybe they don't actually complain about it, but they just want to sit back and they're not going to put their fingerprints on it, because what if it doesn't work? If my fingerprints are on it and it doesn't work, well, I might get blamed for it. So I'm going to just sit back. I'm going to let somebody else do all the work. I'm not going to participate at all. And then we'll just see what happens. Well, the tribe of Ephraim did that. They just wanted to sit back. They wanted to watch others work. They wanted to see somebody else take the chance, see somebody else take the risk, see somebody else put their life on the line, and then see what happens. And then they get mad because Jephthah is successful. Have you ever experienced that in work? Somebody that didn't help you a bit. I saw some heads nod. That's kind of funny. The heads going, yep. We have. We've experienced that. Somebody that just sits back and they just watch, and they just kind of got this look of, okay, yeah, we're just going to see. I'm not really going to fight against you, but I'm just going to sit back and I'm not going to do a thing. And then when you actually accomplish it, that's when they start standing up and they start going, well, sure, maybe you did that, but you didn't accomplish, and they start naming off or they start just tearing apart. They start tearing apart everything that has happened, and they're trying to rip it back into shreds. So often, that is happening because of jealousy, because they're upset that they are not the ones getting credit. The people of Ephraim allowed Jephthah to risk everything. And then, when he achieves victory, they get upset and they try to derail it. And it caused them to want to stop God's work. You know, it's the saddest thing when you see it happen in a church. It is the saddest thing when you see a church starting to reach people, starting to have something God-sized occur. And then for it to be derailed because somebody says, well, I wasn't able to be a part of that. Or I don't like what I'm seeing. And I'm going to now I'm going to complain about it. I'm going to gripe about it. And I'm going to maybe not purposely go in and try to tear it down, but I'm just going to start picking at it. And it's the saddest thing when it happens. But the reality is, it happens. And why? It's jealousy. We get jealous because somebody else achieves success. And the reality is, if you ask those people who achieve success, they wouldn't say, oh, we did. You know, if we reach people as a church and you ask me, Grant, you know, how did you do it? I would have to say, I didn't. Because it's God. When we are fighting and when we're not joining in on the work that God does, we're fighting against it. You know, Jesus says, those who aren't with me are against me. What side do we want to be on? Sometimes because of jealousy. We may not think that we're fighting against God, but we are. We're fighting against the work that God does. The second thing that jealousy does is it causes us to create further conflict. You see, Ephraim didn't stop at just complaining. They didn't stop at just showing up and griping about things and trying to slow down the momentum. They decided that they had been wronged, which you kind of got to laugh at, don't you? They had been wronged that they didn't answer the call to go fight when God calls them to it. They had been wronged. Not they had wronged somebody, but they had been wronged when they said no to God's work. Kind of a skewed perspective. But they didn't stop at just complaining. You see, they begin to threaten violence. They say, we are going to burn down your entire house. Now, they're not talking about just his home. When they're talking about burning down his house, they're saying, we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth, Jephthah. We're going to take you out. As I read that, I began to think, I wonder if maybe the leaders of Ephraim remembered back to the story of Gideon. And maybe they remembered back to how Gideon had spoken with the leaders of Ephraim when they came to complain to Ephraim or to Gideon about not being involved. And I just wonder, I wonder if they remembered that and thought, hey, if we do the same, then maybe Jephthah will behave the same way. Because Gideon basically just kind of said to Ephraim, man, we are so sorry. What do you want? We'll give you whatever. And Jephthah says, you know what, Ephraim? Tough. I asked for your help. And you said no. And I'm not going to sit here and baby you anymore. If you don't like it, bring it on. Now, I'm not saying that, when we have that happen in a church that we ought to just say to somebody, hey, you don't like it, bring it on. I'm not saying that, we need to institute knock-down, drag-out brawls in church because somebody doesn't join in God's work. But what I'm saying is this. Ephraim refused to coddle those that only wanted to complain. about the work that God was doing. Ephraim didn't stop everything and say, "Oh, I'm sorry." But Jephthah said, God is moving forward. God won this victory. Sorry you didn't like it. And war breaks out. This is a terrible war. I mean, this is civil war at its fiercest. 42,000 men of Ephraim died. Tensions became so inflamed that men of Ephraim who were trying to just escape and go home. Now think about that. Men who are just simply trying to escape and go home are captured and killed. And people make a big deal about the Shibboleth. It just comes down to this. They asked, they had a way that they knew, how can I tell who is a person of Ephraim and how can I tell who is not a person of Ephraim? I have no idea why the Ephraimites could not say Shibboleth and could only say Sibboleth. It really doesn't matter. They just heard them and they said, that's an Ephraimite accent, and killed them. When jealousy rises up, it rarely ends well. Here you have a tribe that is decimated simply because they were not willing to allow another tribe to receive glory and recognition. Why should we stand back and allow those who don't work to join God's work to derail His plan? Whether Jephthah was right or Gideon was right, it's interesting that they're both listed in the Scriptures. We have the story of both of them. They handled the situation differently. Gideon handles it with diplomacy, and he works it out, and he takes care of it. And it goes okay for Gideon. But Jephthah takes another tack. And Jephthah just stands and says, no. Should we stand back and allow somebody that doesn't want to join God's work to derail it? No, we shouldn't. How do we handle that? Well, that's where we have to learn to listen to the Spirit of God. Sometimes you have to do what Jephthah did and stand up and say, no. Sometimes you need to sit down with the people and find a way through it. But you always got to come back. We have to go where God has called us. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to leave behind? What kind of legacy are we going to leave behind? I want you to watch a quick video. Did you guys get the video? All right, well, okay. That's supposed to be there. All right, I didn't get them the video. I'm going to apologize for that. The video was about awake. And it goes through and it talks about the different terms that we use for, and what that definition is for the word wake. And one of them that it talked about was the aftermath, a wake of a boat. It's what follows behind a boat. And it asks us, what kind of legacy are we going to leave? Are you going to leave a legacy behind you of jealousy, of complaining? Or are you going to leave a legacy of one that worked hard, not caring about who gets credit, not caring about who receives honor, as long as God is glorified? What kind of life are you going to leave? What kind of legacy are you going to leave? When people look at your life, what are they going to think? Are they going to look and are they going to say, man, there is a person that served God with all of their heart, and they didn't care who got the credit. They just loved God and wanted to be a part of God's work. Or are they going to look and say, you know, there's somebody that only wanted to be a part of it if they were going to be honored. Only wanted to be a part of it if they were going to be recognized. Ephraim wanted the credit for the victory, and they became jealous when they recognized that it would go to someone else. My challenge to all of us, don't be an Ephraimite. Ephraim suffered greatly for their jealousy. Don't suffer for your jealousy. Turn to God and say, God, I want to find where you're at work. I want to find where you're going, and I want to join you. And I want to bring you honor. I want to bring you glory. And I just want to be on your team. Whether that means I play on the JV or the varsity, or even, God, if you put me on the C team. I don't really care. As long as I'm on your team, and as long as I am working for you, and you receive glory. Take your connection card. On the back, there are 2 challenges under I commit to. The first one is I will serve God, making sure He receives glory. That's that mentality of saying, you know, God, I'd really like to be on the varsity, but if you want me on the C team, then I'm going to go be on the C team, and I am going to be the best C team player that I absolutely can be. Because I just want to make sure that you receive glory, and I want to do what you have called me to. Wherever that means that you want me to serve. Doesn't matter how lowly it is or how exalted it is. I want to serve you. The second one is, I will honor others who serve God. And I'm not talking about just the people up front, but honor those that you see doing God's work, whatever it may be. It may be the person that brings in a meal for someone that's sick. It might be a person that comes in and cleans toilets. Not just in the church, but goes and cleans somebody else's house that just can't do it. Might be the person that sweeps the sidewalks. It might be a person that sings. It might be a person that preaches. It may be a person that teaches your Sunday school class or your small group. You know, it doesn't matter where they serve. That you will just have the attitude that when I see somebody who serves my Savior, that I will say to them, thank you. And that I will honor them. And just having the attitude of, I want to make sure that God gets the credit and He receives the glory and the honor. But I also want to say thank you to those that will put their time on the line, their life on the line, and serve Him. Be the kind of person that does it, and then also be the kind of person that watches when others and says, thank you. Thank you for serving God. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your guidance